Today we're going to look at the High Command of Lost Cadia, with a look at Lord Castellan Creed and Colour Sergeant Kell. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Today's video sees us look at some more Astra Militarum Codex datasheets and some of the most iconic guard characters in existence. In this video we'll be taking a look at the datasheets for Creed and Kell, any obvious synergies or combos on the tabletop, and how I would run them myself in games of 40k. In the background, Castellan Ursarkar E. Creed was orphaned at an early age, his parents being killed by Chaos cultists. The 8-year-old Creed escaped the massacre, and following this was quickly inducted into the Cadian White Shields, where there the silent brooding boy struck up an unlikely friendship with the loud and gallerous Kell, and together the two rose throughout the ranks of the Imperial Guard. Creed was quickly promoted to the rank of officer and had a penchant for turning a blind eye when needed, and was disliked by many of his regimental commissars. Towards the end of the 41st millennium, a murderous plot by Chaos traitors wiped out most of the high command of the Cadian officer corps, and in times of such emergency a special rank exists in the Lord Castellan. This was bestowed upon Creed himself, and since then commanded the forces of the Cadian Gate with famously sound tactics against the hordes of the Eye of Terror. Unfortunately, Cadia fell to the 13th Black Crusade, Colour Sergeant Kell giving his life in a rearguard action, holding back Chaos Terminators. Creed was gravely injured in the fight against Abaddon that followed, but his bold actions allowed St. Celestine to temporarily get the better of the War Master. Creed's Cadian 8th fell on holding back the tide of demons and traitors that surged across the planet as Cadia died, though Creed himself disappeared, thought to have been abducted by Trazyn the Infinite. His current whereabouts are now unknown. We can still field Creed and Kell as part of our guard armies though, so let's see what they can do on the table. So Lord Castellan Creed is of course an HQ choice for the Imperial Guard, and he's a Cadian, so you can't field him in other regiments. He costs 55 points and has a fairly similar to your standard company commander, the main difference being is that he has a 4+ carapace armor save. It's really his additional command abilities that you buy him for. He's armed with just 2 hotshot las pistols and a power sword, so a small amount of high AP attacks at close range, but this isn't really what you buy him for. To set him apart, he has 2 very decent abilities. First of all, he has Supreme Commander, which allows him to use the Voice of Command ability 3 times, and it has a range of 12 inches, so where a regular company commander for 30 points would use 2 orders, he can use 3 for 55, and those are more flexible because of the longer range, meaning that you can be a bit more flexible about positioning, and he doesn't need to lead from the front quite as much as some of his compatriots. His other very solid rule is the Tactical Genius rule, which means that if your army is battle-forged, you can receive 2 additional command points if Lord Castellan Creed is your warlord. Now this is really quite a decent bonus, to be honest. Receiving flat extra command points is a great addition to a warlord trait, and it certainly makes him a lot more tempting to be your warlord if you have him in your army. His warlord trait is fixed to be Superior Tactical Training, which is the Cadian one, and it further buffs his orders. Basically, each time your warlord issues an order or tank order on a 4+, the order can affect an additional Cadian unit as the same type as the original target. So basically with his 3 orders, you should on average be getting between 4 or 5 orders, depending on how well you roll for this, meaning that you really can provide all the orders that you need for a decent sized Cadian firebase. Typically I'm not that over-enthused about superior tactical training on other warlords, but it is far better on Creed because he has 3 orders, so you make more efficient use of it, and you also get 2 command points thrown in for free. This is one of the few that really does compete quite well with old grudges or command point farming, which is very nice indeed. In addition, now we have the new tank ace abilities, it actually has a pretty interesting interaction with Creed. Basically you can nominate Creed as your warlord, but instead of generating a warlord trait for him, you can have a tank ace trait instead. Now Creed will still be your warlord, so you still get the 2 command points from Tactical Genius, and you get to pass out his extra orders for a tank ace trait, which a lot of the time you might rather have. The choice is on average between an extra 1 or 2 orders per turn, or maybe having something like a flat 3 damage basilisk, or a harder to kill Leman Russ tank commander. Honestly, I really quite like this interaction, and if I was running Creed, I think I'd typically use a tank ace trait instead of his warlord trait, as he already gets a decent amount of orders anyway, and I think you sort of start to get into diminishing returns really. Aside from all this, he also has the standard refractor shield for a 5+ invul save. Let's take a look at Colour Sergeant Kell then. Kell is 40 points, and again has a standard company commander profile, but he is an elite's choice for Astra Militarum, not an HQ. Again, he has a 4+ armor save for carapace armor, and included in his gear you get a las pistol, power fist and power sword, so he's got a decent amount of fighty options if the enemy do close with you. Kell provides a few decent bonuses. First of all, he has Colours of the Cadian 8th, which means that friendly Cadian units within 6 inches of him may reroll failed morale tests. This is pretty handy, like basically having a commissar but without having to blam your own troops, so for this alone you should be taking a few less casualties to morale. His next rule is Listen Up Maggots, which means you can make one additional order with a single friendly Cadian officer within 6 inches of him, so provided you pair him with another commander, then he essentially provides an order in his costs as well. This works absolutely fine with a platoon commander or company commander, giving them either 2 or 3 orders, but again it has very good synergy with Creed, who can do better with those orders, as you can use them at 12-inch range, and also if you do happen to have taken his Warlord trait, then you can also have another chance to roll to get an additional order out of him. Theoretically it would now be up to an average of 6 orders from Creed if Colour Sergeant Kell is next to him. Finally, further synergy with Creed, he also has the Swarm Protector special rule, which means that each time Lord Castellan Creed loses a wound within 3 inches of Kell, on a 2+ roll he doesn't lose that wound and Kell takes a mortal wound instead, so he can be a little bit of insurance against sniping if Creed happens to get shot by guns. This rule is only so good though, to be honest, as in guard terms Kell is also a reasonably expensive character, so those are still going to be fairly high value wounds that the enemy is plinking off. In general though, you will be wanting Kell to die first after the 2 of them, and this helps ensure that to keep Creed alive and kicking for as long as possible. Sadly, unlike other standard commanders, he doesn't have a refractor field save, so he is solely relying on that 4+ carapace armor to keep him safe, though admittedly this will be good in many situations. Technically you can make him your Warlord, but as he would also have to take superior tactical training, and that only affects orders, then the actual Warlord trait wouldn't do anything. So again, if you did make him your Warlord, it would probably be better to swap out for a Tankcase trait. Overall, Kell's an interesting choice for including in a Cadian battle line, a little bit of extra morale, a little bit of combat prowess, another order, and you can tank wounds for Creed should it be needed. So how would I go about getting more out of these guys in game? We've already gone through Warlord traits, which is their main option, but I would underline that taking Creed as the Warlord is definitely a viable choice. You could potentially load them in transports to keep them safe turn 1 or get them towards an advancing Cadian battle line, and you could potentially have Creed issue orders from within the Chimera with the mobile command vehicle stratagem, though that would get quite pricey turn on turn, so if he can be issuing orders for just outside of it, then it's usually going to be better. In terms of stratagems, in general you're not going to be spending the command points on them too much. As well as mobile command vehicle, you could think about using inspired tactics, which really could allow you to get a ridiculous amount of orders out of Creed. Theoretically, with him and Kell next to each other, you'd be getting an average of 7.5 orders out of them if you use inspired tactics, if you also had the Warlord trait on the go, so Creed really could direct an entire infantry firebase should he need to. I do kind of think that this is somewhat diminishing returns again though. With Creed and Kell next to each other, you will already be getting an average of 6 orders, so is it really worth an extra command points to get another 1 or 2 out of them? I strongly suspect that you could usually live without the 7th and 8th least important orders out of Creed, and you could just do all the rest anyway without spending any command points. So how would I use these guys in game then? In general, you want to be thinking about what sort of units Creed wants to be ordering around. Due to him being Cadian, and then being able to reroll all failed hits from take aim, he works particularly well if you're trying to get any sort of infantry firebase tactic working, which isn't quite as strong as it used to be in early 8th, but if you wanted to have a go for that, then Cadians rerolling their shots is certainly a good way to do it. He's got some good synergy with mortar teams, who never really have to move at all, and could just happily plink away with his orders all game long. Things like veteran teams with lasguns, maybe sniper special weapon squads or commanders, or even bog standard infantry squads, maybe with sniper rifles or some sort of heavy weapon of your choice. You really could build a fairly scary little firebase around Creed and some company commanders, and if you did go heavy on the order strategy, then you could be farming out orders to pretty much all of them each turn. There's no reason that Creed can't be fairly mobile as well. Just like any other commander, he could use move, move, move on himself, and that could let him get to a point where he could issue further orders to other infantry squads, as he can move, move, move before issuing further orders. In general, they're going to want to be kept fairly safe from enemy fire, in particular out of line of sight of sniper fires, and screened from any direct shooting or charging. I know they have very slightly boosted stats compared with standard company commanders in terms of combat, with power fists and power swords, but against most dedicated melee threats in Warhammer 40k, they're still not very efficient at all. Perhaps you could consider charging if it's really going to make the difference between holding back the enemy from breaking through your lines or not, but I'd be very wary about throwing away a 55-point very squishy guard character just because he wanted to have a go at stabbing something with his power sword. So overall, I think that out of the two of them, Creed is actually really quite a reasonable deal for his points. He's a bit less efficient in terms of points per orders than standard company commanders, but that in combination with that option for the Warlord trait is really quite nice. If you didn't desperately want command point farming or old grudges, and instead wanted to go for a tank ace trait instead, then Creed is a really solid pick, as it means that you can still have that tank ace trait and get the tactical genius 2 extra command points absolutely for free. Kell, on the other hand, I'm not quite as sold at as being a competitive choice for Imperial Guard at the moment. In general, I think the two rules that you really buy him for are the reroll morales and extra order. I guess you could see him as a sort of upgrade for a platoon commander, to give some extra morale protection, a further order, and a little bit of muscle in close combat. For me though, I think it's just a little bit hard to use, and if I was really trying to play my best lists, I'd just stick to regular commissars and regular officers. He isn't going to hold you back all that much though, if you did include him and use him intelligently in a Cadian army though. So let me know your opinions on this pair. How do they compared with regular officers for you? And have they achieved anything notable in 8th edition for you so far? If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for further Imperial Guard videos coming out every couple of days. And if you've been enjoying all the content recently, then any support on the Patreon page is absolutely appreciated. The link's down in the description below, and it is what allows me to keep on making these videos for the channel. As well as helping continue to make new videos, there's also a few other benefits, such as being able to see videos early, vote for which videos you'd like to see next for the channel, and also the occasional prize draw where I send out some miniatures to people. If any of that sounds interesting, then please give it a look, and of course a massive thank you to my current Patreons for helping make the channel possible. In any case, a big thank you for listening, and don't forget, Cadia stands in our hearts.